Hello everyone, my name is Mateusz Kolosowski, I'm an international master from Poland. Some of you may know me from the courses I've prepared in cooperation with the Remote Chess Academy. And in this video I would like to show you one of my favorite Sicilian games, which is in fact also one of the of my favorite attacking games played. And this is going to be Sergey Karjakin versus Viswanathan, played in 2006 in the famous Corus Wijk tournament, or Wijk if there's any a Dutch person, you can leave the comment how you should pronounce this name properly. And as you already see, we're going to look at this game from Black's perspective, because Black is going to win it. At any point, feel free to think about the next move, so to take the most out of this game, as if it was your game, as if it was a proper training. So please pay attention to how theoretically heavy this line is going to be, because the opening itself is very interesting, and I strongly recommend that you analyze it in your free time, or at least take a look at some of the model games played in it. This is going to be the Sicilian Najdorf, and we're also going to witness a classical situation of attacking the king when the kings are castled on opposite wings. So please pay attention and let's jump right into the game. There was e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6. So this is the beginning of the Sicilian Najdorf. I'm sure that if you watched my course on Sicilian structures, you still recall that g6 leads to the Sicilian dragon, while a move like e6 could lead to Scheveningen. Knight c6 is also a possibility, quite a flexible move, which could still transpose to 4 knights Sicilian. It could be the Scheveningen or even Richter-Rauser. There is many options there. In any case, a6 was played, bishop e3, and at this point Black has pretty much two moves at his disposal. He could go with e6, which is probably less critical at this point, and also may transpose to the Sicilian Scheveningen. The other move, which was also played in the game, was e5. A more aggressive approach, and already after knight b3 it's quite clear that there may be some strategic subtleties here. It's quite important to understand that Black's pawn structure is already a bit compromised, and Black is looking for some central control with this pawn on e5. Also, his knight on f6 is perfectly positioned, but what Black leaves is a weak d5 spot, so White might be interested in controlling this d5 square, and it, to a degree it resembles the Svieshnikov Sicilian or the Pilnik Sicilian, as some of you may call it. Still, this is one of the main lines of the Sicilian. Bishop e6. As you see, Black develops another piece to cover the d5 spot, f3, strengthening the pawn on e4. Everything is normal here. Bishop e7 was played, and I know that the other move in this position is knight b2 d7, which is another possibility, slightly different setup, may transpose to the game continuation, but if you're considering or already playing this line with Black, you need to be aware of these two possibilities, and especially if you play this position with White, you really need to try to understand the subtleties between those variations. It's definitely one of the heavy-packed lines in Sicilian, and it requires lots of memorization. Queen d2, castles, castles, knight bd7. This is practically the starting position of this line. You could also argue that g4 is pretty much straightforward, and only now Black has a couple of moves at his disposal. Strategically, this is a clear situation of attacking the king when both of the kings are castled on the opposite wings. So in such situations, please keep in mind that the most effective plan usually involves a pawn avalanche simply. So what white wants to do is to go h4, g5, maybe start with h5 first, then go g5, and sooner or later reach g6 in order to open files and diagonals, preferably h and g file. The more files opened, the easier it is going to be to attack the black king. On the other hand, black has his own respective plan: b5, potentially b4, also a5, a4, and opening the position on queenside as well. For instance, in the Dragon Sicilian, you could also see a move like rook c8, sometimes even intending to sacrifice the exchange on c3. This is not going to be the case of this game, but it's good to remember that rook c8 often is a reasonable possibility. Black went b5, and this is still the theory. g4, b5, g5, b4, as you see, very sharp line. None of the players really cares about hanging pieces, but this has all been analyzed, and if you're interested in some details of this line, some really heavy work is there for you. This has all been analyzed and played in great many games, although there is still a few ways for white to try to outsmart black. At this point, Karjakin played knight e2, and as far as I know, even though I don't feel really an expert in this particular line, and in fact this has never appealed to me, because you really need to memorize a lot of lines to be able to play this at a reasonable level. So this is probably a bit of a nuisance if you really don't want to spend too much time on learning a Sicilian line. Then definitely Najdorf is not for you. But as far as I know, knight e2 is already analyzed, and there is practically no chance of opening advantage whatsoever for white, and people don't play this move as often. Nowadays, g takes f6 is the much more popular move. And for instance, after g takes f6, b takes c3, of course black needs to recapture the piece. Queen takes c3, knight takes f6, knight a5. This is a move aimed at blockading the pawn on a6, so that it doesn't go further and attack the white's position. And also, of course, white may be interested in playing knight c6, putting the knight on this perfect outpost, potentially even liquidate the bishop on e7 if needed. And after knight a5, queen e8 is one of the lines, and this has been played by great many strong grandmasters, and as far as I know, this is much more popular nowadays. Again, 2006 might seem not so distant. It is still relatively fresh, but for a line like Najdorf, the theory is developed very quickly, and something which is the main line in January might just be outdated in December very easily. So you really need to, if you want to play the Najdorf, you really need to make sure that you keep up with the trends. So again, as I was saying, knight e2 was played in the game. Viswanathan went knight e8, f4, a5, f5, a4. And again, I'm not going to explain, even try to explain the essence of each and every move. As you see, both players try to attack on respective kings at the same time. Black doesn't really even care that the bishop on e6 is hanging, because his attack is going to be even stronger with a takes b3, b takes a2. He's about to win the game, so it's not a real problem that white is able to go f takes e6. Let's just put it in a different color maybe. F takes e6 is not even dangerous. Black just captures on b3, and his attack is really dangerous. So knight d4 was played, and this is still theory, even though it might look like a strange move. This has all been played. b3. Anand is trying to crash on queen side, and this is a clear indication that he's going to be the first to effectively break through white's king's position. King b1 was played. This is quite a common idea. The intention is that after b takes a2, the king can find some shelter on a1, and the pawn on a2 is effectively blockading black from opening the space and access to the white king. So instead, b takes c2 is a much more powerful move, because this way Viswanathan still keeps the option of opening both a and b file. With b takes a2, yes, the pawn is going to stay on a2, but at the same time this is not going to allow him to get proper access to the white king. Knight c2 was played, bishop b3. It looks like a tremendous move, and it actually is a very strong one. What Anand is trying to say by this move is, okay, let's exchange the bishop. I mean, he is going to lose the bishop anyway. He won a piece earlier on, so he's going to lose a piece, but he says, okay, if I'm supposed to lose the bishop, let's just do this on my terms. So by playing bishop b3, he's securing that a file is going to be open. And as I was saying at the very beginning, in such situations, when we see attack on the kings on both flanks, which is quite typical for Sicilian, usually the player who manages to open the respective king, get the access to the respective king's opponent's king, gets the better winning chances. Of course, Karjakin plays knight a3. There was knight e5, h4, so Karjakin is also trying to get his respective attack. Rook a5, Vishy is preparing to involve more pieces into action. For instance, queen a4, queen a8 followed by queen takes e4 could be an idea. Queen c3, and this at the moment of playing the game was apparently a novelty. I'm not sure how strong it was, but Anand dealt with it in a brilliant fashion. First, queen a8. As announced, this is a powerful move. What black wants to achieve is full control over a file, potentially even sacrifice the rook on a3 in order to get direct access to the white king, and also, of course, it's necessary to bring the rook's major pieces to queenside. Bishop g2 was played, and here came one of the most impressive moves I've seen in attacking chess. Anand realizes that it's difficult for him to transfer the rook, the other rook, the remaining rook from f8 to queenside, and as soon as he knows that, he realizes that it is needed to actually sacrifice the knight for the purpose of bringing other resources to the game. So knight c7, definitely a double exclamation mark move. Queen takes c7, and here Anand just launches the berserker mode, you could say. Rook c8, sacrificing another piece. Queen takes e7, and thanks to all of that, now black has fantastic rook on c file and great attacking prospects on a file. So let's see how he continues this attack. Knight c4. So currently the threat is rook takes a3 or even knight takes a3, and white needs to seek counterplay very quickly, otherwise he's going to be completely lost. So Karjakin tries g6, and I think this is a very logical approach. After all, if black is not going to be paying attention, the g takes f7 followed by promotion might be an important tactical resource. Anand met this with h takes g6, and after f takes g6, he claimed that thanks to the fact that there is no pawn on h7, at the end of the day, in the worst case scenario, he's going to have an escape route for the king on h7, and therefore he comes back to his own attack right now. Knight takes a3, b takes a3. This is of course forced, and rook takes a3. Of course, it required calculation, very precise calculation. I'm sure that for a player like Viswanathan, this was not really difficult to understand that rook a1 is a deadly move, and even if white does something like bishop d4, after rook a1 check, so the highlighted with green move, if black recaptures on a1, at the end this queen from a8 goes to a2, and this is checkmate because the white king has no place to escape. So Karjakin went g takes f7, still hoping for some counterattack, and Anand plays king h7, trying to say that there is no check available and therefore white again needs to defend. Have a look that even though white is up 2 pieces, 2 minor pieces, he cannot really utilize those pieces. They are, it's impossible to transfer those to queenside, and also white is pretty much left alone with the rook on d1 and also with all of those queen moves potentially allowing the queen to come back to defense, but realistically there is no defense for white. Karjakin tried to be smart with promoting to a knight, which you don't see very often, but again Anand just calculated all of that. The calm rook takes f8 proved to be enough. Queen takes f8, so Karjakin tries everything he could. Of course, if black is forced to take on f8, then materially speaking white is still going to have the advantage, because keep in mind that a rook plus 2 minor pieces is usually stronger than a queen, and that would actually leave white still some practical chances, and therefore Anand just doesn't go this way. Rook a1 instead, king b2, rook a2, king c3. If king b1 was played, then I think the easiest, let's just put this on the board maybe, the easiest would be just queen f8, and considering the fact that the white king is in hopeless situation, any queen transfer to b to a1 would finish the game. Also keep in mind that black can also just go back with queen a8, and then potentially rook a1 is again another finishing way, a finishing attack. So in the game there was king c3, the king goes for a journey, and that's never, that always means trouble. Queen a5 check, king d3, queen b5 check, everything just comes by force. King d4, centralization of the king is an important thing, but only in the endgames. I'm afraid that this is not what Karjakin planned to do earlier on. Rook a4 was played, king c3, queen c4 check, and Karjakin resigned at this point in view of king d2 and the inevitable rook a2 check, king e1, queen e2 checkmate. As you see, this was a long sequence, but most of the moves were very forced, and for a player like Viswanathan, the former world champion, this was just a piece of cake, I'm sure about that. And of course the tactical skills enabled him to create this masterpiece, Sicilian masterpiece, against another very strong grandmaster, Sergey Karjakin. I think the most important lesson from this game is that if you want to play the Najdorf Sicilian, you really need to invest your time in learning or even memorizing some sharp, heavy-packed opening lines, but also you need to feel quite comfortable in sharp positions. Of course, there are ways to play the Najdorf in a more restricted way from black's perspective, but this is not how you basically play the Najdorf. The essence of this line is to play sharp, energetic, entertaining chess. And as regards the strategy of the game, whenever you're attacking the king which has castled on the opposite part of the board, make sure you use your own pawns to try to get access to your opponent's king and then infiltrate with your major pieces. That is often the most effective way of playing in such situations. I hope you enjoyed this clip, and thanks for watching.